he would say it begins with that natural feeling that one wants to serve and serve first. And then it's a conscious choice that brings one to aspire to lead.
Well, you guys knew that the time was coming that Sammy and I would do some online counseling. So we're sitting here with our counselor, Veggie Mike.
I mean, he probably could help us, honestly.
No, guys, in all seriousness, Sammy and I sit with all kinds, and Mike just happens to be one of them.
What does that mean?
Accolades just don't stop.
The accolades really are piling up over here, Mike.
While I was away, you guys must have decided that we needed some leadership lessons.
We sure did.
By the looks,
we're like, Joe's gone. Yeah. We need to fix some things. Okay, so first off, leadership. We need leadership.
I know this guest, and I know what he represents.
Yeah.
So today we're gonna get a little schooling on leadership and what that looks like.
Why don't you introduce yourself, Mike, and tell us a little about who you are and a little bit about what you do.
Hey, I'd be happy to. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity. This is pretty cool to get to hang with you guys. So, you know, the little unknown fact is that I'm Bed's dad. But let's go beyond that maybe a little bit. That's maybe what would get me to be famous, is being Bed's dad.
Sure.
Right.
But yeah, my day job happens to be as a personal and executive coach, both at Mayo Clinic and out there in the world, so to speak. And so I've been with Mayo Clinic for 21 years now, and it has been one of the biggest gifts of my life because I've gotten to go places and do things that I may not have before. So sure. It's really a joy to get to do that and to work with leaders really that are making a difference in healthcare, but also in the world. And that's what I love about the connection of what we're talking about today is you guys are doing the same thing. It looks different for Mayo Clinic than it does for Upstream, but yet it's happening. And there's lots of ways that kind of change can happen. So gosh, what a treat. And really, really excited to visit about servant leadership, which is a passion of mine. And thankfully, also a passion of Mayo Clinic's as well. So that's been a good match. And I know for a fact that it's a match for Upstream.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. Maybe one thing that we could do right away, like off the bat, because I feel like there's certain words, like people hear it all the time and you may not even necessarily know what it means. So Could you give like a brief, like what is servant leadership definition?
Yeah. So servant leadership, so this stems from an author, Robert Greenleaf, who really coined the phrase servant leadership. Now, I would argue, and Robert Greenleaf, who's no longer with us, would argue that it didn't start with him. He just coined the phrase. You know, sure. I always say to people, you know, not a lot has changed in leadership since the time of Jesus. And I believe that. We just coin different things, we add different models, and we write different books, give different looks at it. But in the end, that's where it started. And so for Robert Greenleaf, he published an essay in 1970 about this concept of servant leadership and the philosophy. So he was an educator and coach for AT&T. And then in 1970, he published this essay, and he went off and he started his own Center for Servant Leadership, and really started a movement across America around this style of leadership. So think of it as a philosophy and a set of behaviors or characteristics. Lots of authors have written about the characteristics of servant leaders that when they're put into action, they enrich the lives of individuals, they build stronger organizations. And here's the connection with Upstream. They ultimately create a just and caring world. And I see the connection so strongly in the messages that you guys are giving out. My personal experiences as getting to go to Haiti to learn what has been such a passion for you all as well. So Greenleaf would argue that servant leadership, it begins with that, he would say, it begins with that natural feeling that one wants to serve and serve first. And then it's a conscious choice that brings one to aspire to lead. So service first, lead second. And here's what I love the most. He would say the best test of servant leadership, and also super difficult to administer, is, do those that are served grow? Do they become better humans themselves? And wow, how powerful is that to get to be able to say that we're helping others grow through our leadership.
Yeah.
It takes the misnomer, I think, oftentimes is that it's soft, it's fluffy, it's, hey, can I get you a cup of coffee? What can I do for you from that soft, fluffy side? But the beauty in servant leadership and the philosophy and the characteristics are nothing soft. It's about, how does the person grow in those tough moments when you have to give feedback that's maybe not so flattering? How do they grow? How do you treat people so that they do grow even in those moments? And that's what I love about it. It's not soft and fluffy. It's very much a challenging skill. And sometimes what people need to be better to grow is to get that tough feedback.
Absolutely.
That's so interesting, because I've heard the term servant leadership a bajillion times, and I would have never had the thought that it was about the person that you're leading, that they're growing. Like, I wouldn't have even have considered that, because I think a lot of times, like, when you see leaders, I'm even thinking of like leaders that are in my own life, my own sphere, like, it's very obvious that they're leading and that they're powerful leaders. But then to take that second look and be like, oh, okay, like, are the people that they're leading really growing? Because if not, then it's not servant leadership. I wouldn't have made that connection. That's interesting.
Yeah. And that's the test. And so if you think about it as a pyramid, it flips the pyramid upside down. So it puts the people that you are serving at the top, as opposed to the traditional power philosophy is the leaders at the top and everybody is below them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This flips it on its axis, and that's
like
where
that.
the power comes from. Yeah.
Well, this became a real interest for me too. When I went from when I switched from the vocation of for-profit to nonprofit, in the for-profit world, oftentimes we kind of get an easy out as leaders because they're employees, right? We can keep our finger on the pulse of expectations of what we need to get done because the paycheck and the job is part of it. And we've seen that as time goes on, because people are giving so much time to their work, it's not just money motivated anymore. And that attaboy and those accolades and that personal character development, like you're talking about, how the people that we're serving become so important. Now, when I crossed over into the nonprofit world and I realized that you didn't have that ability to just pay people, you were working primarily with volunteers, servant leadership became everything, because that motivated people they were motivated by leadership. And when they felt like somebody was invested into a similar vision and their growth, it definitely worked out. Mike, what got you passionate about leadership? You started off in human resources. Was there a conversion through that? Like, where were you really inspired by just the idea of leadership and servant leadership and teaching, coaching, all of that?
Yeah. Good question. So for me, it was seeing a different way of leading that raised people up and empowered people, and really helped them be their best. And the realization, and just like I've been in lots of leadership roles, and like any leader, we learn the hard way. And once we get started with that, we're never done learning. That's the trick with leadership. We're never done. We never arrive. It's a constant self-development. But where my passion came from is our ability we can get short-term compliance from people through power, but we won't get long-term commitment that way. So in the world of healthcare, that approach or philosophy to leadership leads to better patient care, leads to happier employees, which leads to good for all in that case. So we can get a lot more done with the mass than we can as any one individual. So then what I love about this is happen to be able to go to a lot of additional education around servant leadership. And this is the part I didn't get until I did that we can think of our institutions as servants as well. So Upstream is a classic example of that, and maybe a little bit more obvious example of that. But Greenleaf had a thesis that he wrote about, and the thesis was that, caring for persons, the more able and the less able serving each other, that's the rock upon which a good society is built. So exactly what you guys are doing in Haiti, exactly what you are doing in the United States, even by sharing that message. And I think organizations, whether it's Mayo Clinic or a very small dental office in Cashton, Wisconsin, has the ability to serve a community and make it stronger beyond just filling cavities or healing a broken arm or making sure one family has dinner tonight. It goes far beyond that. Yeah. That's where it really clicked for me. The power of this goes far beyond any one business making more money. And that's what I love about it.
Well, that's awesome. It makes me think of even this. Have you heard of the Biddy and Bo's coffee shops? It's like this kind of national franchise, and it was all started by a family who had kiddos with Down syndrome. And so all of the employees are people with different abilities, different disabilities. And I love that they're allowing them to run the show. I mean, they're literally like running these coffee shops and serving people that way. And it's such to me, like I was thinking about that when you were talking about that, is like, it's just such a beautiful picture of that you could just, society could say like, oh, they can't really do anything. But yet somebody is willing to say like, hey, like I'm going to lead them. I'm going to empower them, and they're actually going to change their world, because we all know that people, especially with special needs, are always like the ones that are, adding brightness to our days and inspiring people and whatever. So it makes me think of that, just something like right here in our own country and whatever that's going on.
Yeah, I think sometimes we got to get out of our own way and open our minds to other possibilities. Yeah, love that example.
Yeah. What would you say are like attributes of somebody that has like strong leadership, servant leadership skills?
Yeah. So it's funny. So in a lot of the classes that I teach, an activity that I will start off with is, go on a journey with me and think of the absolute best leader you have ever had. And tell me now, what did they do? What did they say? What made them that great leader? And it's going to always be things like, well, they gave me feedback, and not easy feedback. They gave me tough feedback. They challenged me. They gave me opportunities. Saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. They believed in me. They recognized and leveraged my strengths. They didn't beat me up for what I am maybe not as strong at. One that comes, there's two that are always there, and I think they're the most powerful. Number one, they listen to me. And how many of us truly feel listened to? Whether it's in our relationships, whether it's at work, to truly feel listened to is a rarity. And so those things stand out for people. The second one is they empowered me to be my best self. And that means giving me some latitude. That means pushing me when I'm not feeling at my best, allowing me to find the joy in my work and my life. Are these two things separate, or can they be blended? We talk about work-life balance. There is no such thing anymore, right? We have phones, we have computers, we're constantly being bombarded. How do we blend those things in a way that works for the other person? So again, all of those things you can connect back to servant leadership. those are things that, if you look at characteristics of a servant leader, would fit into that. So listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, foresight, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people. And then I think the big one is building community. So do we build community amongst our teams, amongst our communities that we serve, our families, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I, of course, you have more experience with this than I do, but it's one of those things too, you kind of see like a lot of our experience has been within churches. And, a lot of times you can see, there's certain types of leaders who it's like really kind of about them. And then there's certain kind of leaders where they're really all about empowering the people around them. And I think we've seen it all for sure. We've been a part of it all for sure. But it's definitely, it's so interesting. I just keep going back to you just saying like, it's if the people around you are growing, I think about some of our own experiences and the different things that we've done. And it does kind of like take you a step back a little bit and be like, oh, wow, okay. Are the people that we're serving, are the people that we're leading, are they really growing on an individual level? And like as a community and as like a team, it's a lot to think about actually.
Yeah, and we are human, right? So even the most servant leader focused leader turns inward at times, and loses that outward mindset of focused on others and starts to say, what do I want? What do I need? And it takes effort. It really does. And nobody's perfect at it. Right. They just are not. So it's a lifelong journey.
That was kind of there's always a beginning to everything, so there's obviously natural attributes. Some people are just predisposed. This is the way they like to lead. Others may be motivated in saying, this sounds like a good principle, but oftentimes you find yourself checking the motives first, right? I mean, some people are just naturally others focused, or can really understand that by being others focused, you can benefit yourself. I think about marriage, for example. There are times in marriage where that in serving the other person, you also are a benefactor. It shouldn't be your primary motive. Right. I'm not going to go wake up tomorrow and do the dishes all day long with the expectations that I'm going to get the blessing to go fishing. But
you might.
But you do know that.
Mike's like, wait, I do that all the time.
Do you ever find moments where people are pursuing, servant leadership or leadership for the wrong motives, and it just doesn't seem to flush itself out? Like, does it have a qualifier, I guess you could say, where you have to start with somebody and say, hey, listen, like,
absolutely. Yeah. We can all try to fake it, and we can all try to fake our faith. We can all try to fake our servant leadership, but it doesn't work. It shows itself, unfortunately or fortunately, because that way then it's time to, hey, this isn't working. And so as I work with leaders and for myself too, I'm human. I'm no different than anybody else. You trip, slip, and you fall, and you stop and you say, okay, so what caused that? Was it because I was focused inward, or was it because was I really practicing servant leadership? Was I really practicing my faith? Was I really practicing whatever it is that I'm trying to use as my guardrails through life? And through that awareness, to go back and say, okay, I gotta reset here and do things a little bit differently. That's when it comes into play. So you're absolutely right, Joe. And I think in coaching, that's one of the benefits of coaching. Not that any one coach is specifically the gift. It's the gift of the thought partner and the mirror that a coach can bring. Mm-hmm. So it's the opportunity to say, hey, you're telling me about this challenge that you're facing. Let's get up on the balcony and let's look at it. If you were to look at it from the balcony, how are you approaching this? From an other mindset or from a self mindset? What would it look like differently if you were looking at it from and so just wrestling with those kinds of things can be hard, right? Really hard self-awareness. And at the same time, really, really important to go, oh, yeah, I need to do some things differently here. And again, that just takes a good, solid, trusting relationship, whether that's a professional coach, whether that's a really good friend, mentor that can gently with love say, hey, how else should we be looking at this?
Mm-hmm. So earlier you were talking a little bit about how servant leadership, some people might consider it like soft or like a, like a soft way of leading people. So how would you say, like, somebody that is trying to be more others focused in their leadership, what is a way in which that can be a pitfall to where they're not taking care of themselves? And like, how do you balance that? Because of course, like if you're always focused on others, you're probably not, you're going to be maybe more prone to not taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
So is that something that you see? And what do you say about that?
Aha. Sammy, you are good. Yes. So the truth is that, and you see it all the time in your experience in churches, burnout amongst pastors has got to be just enormous. Mm-hmm. So servant leadership, number one rule is you have to put on your own oxygen mask first, right? You have to take care of yourself. And who amongst us hasn't slipped on that at one point in our lives? Sure. We do, because we do care, and we think, oh, if I just push a little harder, if I break down a few more barriers, if I work a few more hours, whatever the case may be, and that's where this gets really hard. Is we're being pulled and called to serve others. And we think it should be at all costs. Mm-hmm. The power in it comes when you both show the balance for yourself or the blend for yourself. But here's the other piece. You're role modeling it then. Mm-hmm. That's when the real power comes in. You teach other people how they can give for the long haul and serve for the long haul. Teaching people to give until it kills you, in air quotes, kills you, that's not helping others grow.
Right.
And so role modeling that becomes really cool. So I really appreciate that you recognize that, because I think it is something that's missed far too often when you hear that word servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for
Mike,
sure.
I'm looking down some of our questions here, and to be respectful on time, it wasn't all that long ago that you took a trip to Haiti. And, it's easy for me to think, you came down there just to see what we were up to, see what your son and your future daughter-in-law were into. But also, being that this is kind of the fabric of who you are and what you do day to day, I'm curious how that type of trip, completely out of the element type trip, impacted or maybe planted some seeds on how you look at leadership or empowerment or servant leadership.
Well, yeah, it was life-changing, and that's not new news to the two of you. I'm sure a big part of what drew you to your passion with that, and you've probably heard that many times, that wow, that experience, that week that we spent there, 10 days was life-changing, and it truly was. Yeah. So in essence, for me, the experience, it's at the heart of servant leadership. And as I reflected on my time there, it just became super obvious to me that, again, even though I kind of knew this, it reaffirmed it, that no one person, no one leader, no one pastor can change the world alone. It truly requires a community to do that. But the leader's role becomes critical to be able to move forward towards a common goal. So if you don't have that common goal, you're not going to get very far. You got to be able to leverage strengths of others, build them up when they're down, break down barriers that they're facing, recognize their efforts, keep them feeling that empowerment. Yeah. That's the key. So the beauty is that through that, the leader gains immensely through the joy of seeing others flourish, accomplishing goals not attainable alone. So my guess for you, Sammy and Joe, is when you have a group in Haiti and you see the light bulbs come on and you see the tear in the eye you see the Bible being opened at a time that maybe it wasn't before. The reflection that's happening that was not there when you were on the plane going to Haiti, that's got to feel pretty darn good to you guys. And that's what the servant leader gets. Nobody else knows that. But that's the payment in a way of seeing others grow, flourish. So for me, it just reaffirmed this whole idea of servant leadership and the power of it, not only for the individuals, for the communities that we serve, but for us as leaders. It just looks different. Yeah. So that was really a fun awareness to come to and to bring back to Mayo Clinic, which, very different missions and yet similar missions, and to apply it in a very large organization like that, and to see the ripple effect that even though the work that I do isn't working with leaders that are impoverished, these are very successful people, but the ripple effect that they can have across the world just reminds me that there's a lot of different ways to serve, and it can have a huge impact in a lot of different ways.
I
Absolutely.
love that.
Yeah, the tangible of Haiti for me, it goes back to, I think, original plan. I've picked up on you say so many times, community, society. In America, we've really been robbed a little bit in our independence and in how strong and how much we can provide for ourselves. We've kind of lost how much we need each other.
Yes.
So like when I'm in Haiti, or when we get to lead people in Haiti, it's much more tangible how dependent everybody is on each other. And I think about that a lot when it comes to servant leadership, or just leadership as a whole. Everybody has a job to do. Our society, our community, our world is all dependent on each of us kind of doing our job appropriately. And God gives us this beautiful image that the body is made up of many different parts, and not one is more significant than the other, although the eye seems precious because it gets to see the world through it. I oftentimes tell people to look down at their feet, because we don't think about our feet very often, but yet it's our feet that take us everywhere we go. Our feet have been with us every place that our mind can go back to. And I think of people that way, that your Mayo Clinic, your hospital, whether it be our organization or any business, any one person that's hurting in that environment, we really do all suffer together in some sort of way. And then the flip side, wherever we are victorious as a team, we get that victory. And that's fun to be the leader of that. But I think any true leader realizes he's only as strong as the team below him. So, why wouldn't you build them? Why wouldn't you strengthen them?
Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah. So
love that.
I've been pretty excited. I'm glad that Upstream had the Haiti trip had some impact on you. Babe, anything that you're thinking of as you're kind of thinking about Mike here and leadership, servant leadership?
When talking about servant leadership, we're hearing that empowering others is important. Why is it important? Not only for the team as a whole, but for the individuals that you are leading and serving.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think, part of what it is, what we talked about earlier, which is we can accomplish so much more together than we can as individuals. And as good as it feels to be able to say, I did this or I did that, the truth is there's very few really powerful things that happen in a silo by yourself. It just really doesn't, other than maybe some self-growth, some self-development. And that's where the real work happens there. But yeah, so I think the ability to empower others, and I know that's a big part of the model that Upstream follows in empowering the folks in Haiti, as opposed to us coming and telling them what they should do. And I just really respect that about how you guys approach things, because here's what I love. It preserves the dignity of the people that you're trying to serve. and without that, I think we limit what's possible.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it empowers their dignity, or it preserves their dignity. And I think also, like, when you're making somebody feel valuable, when you're making somebody feel like their ideas matter and that their life matters, that their thoughts matter, like all those things, like that's hugely important. And I think, in our own lives, like when people really, like you said earlier, like listen to you and you feel heard and you feel like you have valuable thoughts and ideas, and that is so huge for us, just to be able to really see people feel that way. I mean, realistically, what do we know about living in City Soleil? Nothing, right? Nothing. We don't live there. We're not ever going to live there. So how would we even be able to walk in there and make solutions for all the things that are going on with them? We can't, and so it's like, I think there's sometimes that, we as Americans think that we know everything, and we think that we have solutions for everything because we have smarts going on. We have infrastructure. We have all these different things that are going on. And we sometimes are prone to just taking that and putting it somewhere. And rather than saying like, wait a minute, these people have just as much intelligence. They have just as much, they have more of a vested interest. They have more insight than we would ever bring to the table. Like, why would we not want to hear them out? Why would we not want to say, how can I use my skills and giftings and my experiences to really elevate like what you're going through, and how we can help you, in, out, and through that, right?
Yeah, it's very much an inward mindset. If we go and try to just tell a country how to fix themselves, right? It's really arrogant, inward mindset, and it's to make us feel better. If we're honest, like we did something and fixed it, as opposed to what do they really need? What do they really want? Maybe we don't even know what they really want. Have we ever really asked?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
What do they really want? Yeah.
Well,
and that's you can apply that to everything. That doesn't even necessarily just mean our work in Haiti. That's literally,
I'm thinking
your friendships, your families, your marriage, all those different things. It kind of reminds me a little bit like we were talking, it was like my birthday and Mother's Day pretty close together. And Joe was like planning different things. And he came to me and he's like, hey, I just kind of realized I was more so planning your birthday based on my own birthday. And I was more so planning Mother's Day based on what I would want, rather than like what you would want. Because I was like, for me, I look at the perfect day of celebrating as doing nothing. Like, I just want to sit at home in my bed, be left alone. Like, that sounds great. Whereas he's like, I want to go on an adventure. So she must want to go on an adventure, And so it's like every area of our life, parenting, everything, friendships, that all of these things really apply. What were you going to say?
I'm just thinking about Mike's world, some of the most educated men and women, are in that facility. Therefore, by rights, they may feel like they really understand. But, a surgeon has probably not spent too many hours being a nurse or an LPN or a medical administrator.
And vice versa.
Yet as a team, they have to figure out how to be the best, because either one think of how many you use dentist visits. There are dentists that might be some of the best dentists in the world, but their receptionists, aren't loved and cared for well. And you that's the first person you meet walking in the door.
Yeah.
So
true.
You're judging that experience off of what might be, the lower level of this team, but because, things tend to flow downhill, they may not be receiving that. So sometimes it's just honor and respect for each other's position. And their giftings, why they're in that role. We recently asked, we just came back from Haiti, and one of our teachers, she's been around for 22 years. I've known her for 11. And she was just describing this situation. Somebody asked her, like, what's your hope? What's your passion? Why do you come to work every day? There's gunshots going off. It's dangerous. And she just started telling a story about this one child, that would sit on her lap and she'd care for every day. And now he's a third-year university student. And when you start hearing like that person was just speaking as the administrator, the principal of the school was speaking, and each person in their right has a passion and a reason why they're coming to work. so oftentimes in that leadership role, like you said, our job is to empower that, give each person their own right, their voice to be heard, and we're all better and stronger for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think about servant leadership, and just boiling some thoughts down about it. If we all just find some way to serve, and it could be in a country like Haiti, which has incredible needs, of course, but don't forget about our neighbor across the street whose suffering is very real for them. And the small little thing that you do as you're both out getting mail from the mailbox could change their life. And that's in front of us every day if we stay open to it, if we watch for it. And I'm as guilty as the next person for being a little too focused on, I have to get out fishing, or I have to get to work, or this or that. And then I miss those opportunities that are right there in front of me. And so watch for them. They're there.
Yeah. And I think people like you, who obviously, like, you're teaching about servant leadership all the time. By default, you're leading in the style of servant leadership. People like us who are serving, you can easily forget the person that you need to smile at on the way to the mailbox, because you're already in this mindset of like, I'm just doing it. I'm already serving. I am, look, and you can really miss the things that are right in front of you. And I think it's, I hear so many times, like, especially from like young moms, where they feel like they don't know what their purpose is. And I'm like, are you kidding me? You literally have the greatest purpose there is, like right in front of you, like raising amazing human beings. And yet, because it doesn't look like maybe society tells you it's supposed to look, like you're not, a CEO of this company. And that doesn't mean like that moms can't go and do that. Cool, do that. But if your role and your calling is to be at home with your kids, like that's like the best thing that there is, really, in my mind. And so, I don't know. It's so interesting because you also have like the society around you telling you what leadership is and what it isn't. And if you aren't doing a certain thing, that you're not doing enough, you're not serving enough, you're not seeing other people enough. And well, that's just tragic, because I think our society would be a whole lot better if you had a lot more moms and a lot more dads who saw just being phenomenal parents, messing up plenty for sure, but just being phenomenal parents as like one of the best ways that you can serve.
Yeah. So true. So spot on. And I really thank you guys for the work that you do, because you have done it through times that maybe it was really popular to do that work, but you've also done it at times where it hasn't been that popular. And certainly you've done it at times when it hasn't been easy to do that work. And so to me, that's just the quintessential sign of your focus on serving others over yourselves. And you've made a difference. And I think that is, I hope you have a lot of pride in that, without a doubt. So.
Well, we both thank you very much, Mike, and right back at you too. Obviously, this is your world, and you're making the world a little better, a better place by bringing this type of teaching and coaching. I've got to meet quite a few doctors and healthcare professionals in my life, and I know they need a guy like you in their corner that can kind of dial it all in and show them the greater purpose to life, which was probably the reason why they pursued it in the first place. That's the interesting part is inside of whatever we get lost into our careers, there usually is that
why,
that initial
why
passion part. That probably was a little more others focused. So thank you for what you do. Anything that you'd want to wrap up on that we might have missed as we're talking about this?
Yeah, and you guys can edit this later, but I've got a little something I thought I'd share with you if you're open to it. It's a short little reading. So and I gotta put the glasses on because it's super small written. But so this is one of my absolute favorite readings about servant leadership, and it was written by a guy named Dr. Kent Keith, and he wrote a book called Anyway: The Paradoxical Commandments of Servant Leadership. So this comes from that, but it sums some servant leadership up for me really well, and what you guys do with Upstream. So here we go. People are illogical, unreasonable, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you will win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. The biggest men and women with the biggest ideas can be shot down by the smallest men and women with the smallest ideas. Think big anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for a few underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build it anyway. People really need help, but may attack you if you do help them. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you have anyway. And I think you guys have done that and appreciate the messages that you share. And so ode to you guys and to Upstream. So thank you for what you do.
Well, right back at you, Mike.
Yes,
I mean,
thank you, Mike.
lucky for us, we get to daily see the fruit of your servant leadership, married to our kiddo. And so we're constantly thankful for you and Lisa and your family and just the beautiful family that you've raised and
right back
the way
at
that
you.
it blesses us so big.